So here we go. This weekend of Manchester, BT Sports brings the big heavyweight clash. Number one versus two. Who is the best Joe? Let's find out right here on BWTM Sports. Okay, welcome to the Joyce versus Joseph Parker big fight preview on BWTM Sports. Thank you, and glad you could join us. If you haven't already, please do smash the subscribe button, and please hit the like button. It does help the channel get views and this video get views. So really appreciate you smashing the like button. So let's talk about this particular fight. Wow. Years ago, I met Joseph Parker before he was about to fight Anthony Joshua for the unified heavyweight championship of the world. I think at the time he was the WBO champion, and I think Joshua would have had probably the WBA, IBF championship, something like that would have been. And Wilder would have been WBC champion still at that time. And I met him in London, sat down, spoke with him at length. And the guy is as genuine as you can in terms of, he's the kind of guy you could sit down in a pub, or in a bar, in a club, in a library. You'd go anywhere with Joseph Parker. And he's such a guy. He's like a people's champion. You know what I mean? He really is. He's a promoter's dream, Joseph Parker. So articulate. Really, no ears or graces. He's just a likable guy. He's just that dude that you'd have in a class that you want to be a best friend with. He's that dude in the class that, you'd want to hit the town with. That dude in the class that, or at the party that you want to be next to, Joseph Parker is that guy. I remember watching Joseph Parker back in the day when he's been sponsored by Burger King. And Joe, if you're watching, really proud of you, son. Remember watching him back when he used to do these after he'd win his fights. He'd be in his car with his mates after the fight or before the fight, and he'd be talking with his mates in the car. And I remember those Joseph Parker days when Joseph was just coming up the rankings, knocking people out, and people saying Joseph Parker was going to become heavyweight champion of the world, and he actually did become heavyweight champion of the world with Kevin Barry. And I said that Joseph Parker had hit a ceiling with Kevin Barry, and Kevin Barry could no longer take him to that next level. And I'm glad. I am so glad that Joseph Parker made the decision to join a heavyweight trainer in Andy Lee. Andy Lee is for my mind, I think he is a very underrated trainer. I think he's come out of the Emmanuel Stewart lab because he was trained by Emmanuel Stewart. So he was around Manny trained him for many years. I think it was Adam Booth that actually got him to win the world title. But by long before then, Andy Lee had been fighting some top quality opposition. And Emmanuel Stewart had taught him a lot of the stuff he knows today. So all that Kronk stuff, Andy Lee, Sugar Hill, Jonathan Banks, even you got James Ali Bashir. There's a mix of them around that, in and around that Kronk time. Of course, Lennox Lewis, the Thomas Hearns, the ones as well. But in terms of trainers, you're looking at Banks, Bashir, Hill, Lee. That's why Hill and Lee probably got on pretty well. And I wouldn't be surprised now if Lee was able to take what Hill had and then use it to his advantage. Andy Lee, I think he's going to go on to be a great trainer. He isn't a great trainer yet, but I believe he will go on to be a great trainer. It'll be just If you listen to him talk, very analytical, can break things down. You listen to him when he's commentating, he'll break things down. He'll speak about things, even if you don't agree with him, he'll speak about things. I mean, once, I think it was Paul Dempsey or something, he was on BT Sports and he pulled Paul Dempsey up. I think it was Paul Dempsey. He pulled him up about some inaccuracies about boxing. So he'll speak his mind, Andy Lee. But I like him. I've always liked Andy Lee. Andy Lee's one of those guys I would love to have regularly on this channel to talk to. He's one of those guys like I believe I could sit down and talk to for hours. I learn a lot from. I like Andy Lee as a person. I've never met him, but I've never been wrong about people that I've kind of had an instinct about and then met them in person and they've turned out to be just that person. And Andy Lee, I like Andy Lee a lot. I've got a lot of time for Andy Lee as a trainer and what he brings to the table and what he's brought to Joseph Parker. And I've noticed, one of the things, what happened when Lennox Lewis, when he got beat by Oliver McCall, when he came back under Emmanuel Stewart, Lennox looked thicker, bigger, stronger. And it looks like Andy Lee's done the same thing with Joseph Parker. If you look at the rematch with Parker when he fought Chisora, he looked bigger and physically stronger. So I think they're going to keep that with Joseph Parker. And Andy Lee will. And if you listen to Joseph Parker, even in interviews, you can see how that's rubbing off on Joseph Parker, the way Joseph Parker's talking. He's always been a guy who's very articulate, but now he's thinking a lot more about his boxing. And that's rubbing off because of Andy Lee. He's thinking about things. He's thinking about, his career and who he is. And of course, that also will move into areas such as shot selection, shot placement, punch position, when and how to throw a punch, and getting himself in and out of danger, and being able to get in and out of danger with footwork. So, and boxing with a game plan. So I don't feel that Kevin Barry would have given Joseph Parker he would have given him the platform to get started. But this is where Joseph Parker can kind of like have a trampoline. He can bounce off of Andy Lee and actually accelerate his career. So for me, for a long time, Joseph Parker was stagnant. But with Andy Lee, I think he now is coming into his own. And I think we're going to see the best of Joseph Parker. I always thought that Joseph Parker, had what it took to actually become an undisputed champion. I said this a while ago, that I thought that Joseph Parker was probably one of the best well-rounded heavyweights, takes a good shot, has good punching power, he's decent footwork, good hand speed, thinking, good stamina, takes a shot well, absorbs punishment well. Joseph Parker, I think during the period of when he got beat by Anthony Joshua, and then he came back and fought Dillian Whyte, I wouldn't advise him to come back and fight Dillian Whyte straight away. His mind wasn't in the game. And even when you listen to Joseph Parker, when he was sitting and he was talking, that press conference, that interview, face off with him and Dillian Whyte, he had the fur cut he had on. He was talking about how he lost his. He said that he's already made it in boxing, and he sounded like he had 1 foot out of boxing. But now this guy seems like he's got 2 feet back in boxing, and he seems a very, very dangerous guy back now. So that's Joseph Parker. Nice guy, can fight. And if Lee and him get it together, he will be a very, very dangerous fight for Joseph Joyce. Let's go across to Joe Joyce now. Joe Joyce, a guy that at first I didn't quite warm to at the start. I didn't help with Sam Jones chipping at me all the time. But as time went on, I could see things about Joe Joyce. I called him the British George Foreman. It was me who came up with that British George Foreman thing that was then taken, and now people are running with it. I called him British George Foreman because, like Foreman, slow on the feet, Olympic champion, or he should have been an Olympic champion, Olympic pedigree, thudding punching power, great chin, absorbs a punch well, walk through punches, walk through them like a mummy. Like Foreman has a big left jab, big right hand. And when he gets you on the ropes, that's Foreman will pummel you on the ropes. And if you look at Foreman's fights and you look at Joyce, when Joyce hits you against the ropes, that's where Joyce is at his most dangerous. When he's got you against the ropes, he pummels you against the ropes. Like Foreman, though, Foreman is easy to hit. Foreman later in his career kind of brought up the cross-arm defense. When Evander Holyfield was unloading on him, he couldn't stand there and take on him shots. So he put the cross-arm defense because he was taking too many punches against Evander. And it worked. It got him through the 12 rounds. But he had some moments where I think Holyfield with 8, 9, 10 punches. And I don't know about Foreman's career, but Joe Joyce has been knocked. He got stopped in the amateurs in the first round by Anthony Joshua. Has Joe Joyce improved from those amateur days to now? If you go back and look at his fight against Fraser Clark, that fight right there, Joe Joyce hasn't really moved on from that guy right there. If I'm being really honest, he hasn't moved on much from that guy. I kind of wonder what Ishmael Salas is doing with Joe Joyce, because he always had a decent jab. He always was able to take a good punch. He always came forward recklessly, I'm not sure what Salas brings to Joe Joyce. Up to this day, I still can't get it. And I think that if he was with Andy Lee, he'd be a better fighter, a better boxer. If it was James Al-Bashir, he'd be a better fighter. If it was Stacey McKinley, he'd be a better fighter. I just think if he was with a heavyweight trainer, instead of with the circus act, which is what Ishmael Salas is, he might be a great trainer at middleweight and super middleweight or all the lighter weights, but he doesn't do it for Joe Joyce. In my personal opinion, I just don't see it. I don't see it. There's no point hitting a tennis ball like this all the time, yeah, and then getting hit with punch, walking straight into big right hands from round one. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. So I don't get it. I don't get it. Joyce is doing the same things he did against Fraser Clark. Again, please go back and look at the Fraser Clark fight, because it's that sort of shootout that I actually think that Parker could win. Even in that shootout, I think Parker could win, because Parker's not only a faster puncher and probably more fluid than Fraser Clark. He is, I don't want to say intelligent, but his ring IQ is better than Fraser Clark's. Fraser Clark was walking in straight lines against Joe Joyce in that amateur fight, yeah? Both had no head guard on, by the way, just remind you of that. So it was and they were throwing bombs at one another. And, Joyce was eating some monstrous shots, but so was Fraser Clark. I think if Parker's in that situation, he's going to throw more punches at Joyce. He's going to be better on his feet, so he won't get clunked with those sort of shots that Fraser Clark was. And I use that fight because it's at that sort of pace I expect this fight to be with Parker, because I think it's going to be also like Tom and Jerry. Tom chasing Jerry around the ring. I believe that Parker's game plan, he's talking about game plan. When a guy starts talking about game plan, it tells you now he's not going to come and fight. He's going to fight in spots. He'll fight when Joyce doesn't want to fight, and he'll box when Joyce doesn't want to box. So when Joyce wants to fight, he'll box. And when Joyce wants to box, he'll fight. Do you understand? So that's how I see it doing. I see Lee will say, you're going to have to fight in points. You're going to have to fight. You may have to fight yourself off the ropes, but don't stay on the ropes. You may have to fight yourself off the ropes. Do not stay on those ropes. Keep off those ropes at all times. Keep the fight in the center ring. When Joyce punch, you punch with Joyce because you've got faster hands. But when you punch, slip inside of Joyce to let your hands go. Slip inside. If you look at the video of Joyce with Eddie Lee and Joseph Parker, it looks like he's going to get Parker to slip inside of Joyce's shots. Slip inside. So when Joyce is going to slip inside of Joyce and throw the shots because he's a little shorter. So slip under the jab or slide the jab and throw the left hook. Do you know what I mean? So I can see Parker slipping shots and trying to get inside. Now, here's the thing. Parker's looked good against Chisora, but this is an aging Chisora. A Chisora who's been through many wars. Now you've got Joyce. The question is, when the kitchen gets hot and Parker's punches bounce off of Joyce, and Joyce is still there, and he starts tagging Parker. Does Parker want to stay there and have a fight like he did with Chisora? Chisora's one thing. Joyce is another thing. When Joyce hits Parker, we're going to know real quickly if Parker's going to want to engage in that sort of because Joyce is going to want to engage Parker in that Fraser Clark sort of back and forth, because that's his best shot of beating Parker. Back him to the ropes, pummel him to the ropes. I don't think Joyce can win this fight standing at the end of the jab, using the jab for 12 rounds. I just can't see it happening. Parker won't allow that to happen. Andy Lee won't allow Joyce to do that. So I just don't believe that. So I believe they're going to bring a certain amount of heat. In fact, as I said before in the previous talking about this fight, if I'm Andy Lee, I gamble. I gamble in the first three. I gamble in the first 2 rounds. I say, you know what? First round, jump on him. Jump on Joyce and get inside and do your work. Get inside and do your work. You know, because we know that Joyce is there 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He's got that energy because nobody's worked him. But get in there early. Get in and do your work early. And do the work early. Get inside trying to hit this guy, hurt this guy early, because he's a slow starter. You've got to jump on this guy. You literally got to jump on him. And if he does start slow, just like in the Christian Hammer fight, he will leave himself open, and that's where you can counter. And that's when you can land your shots. And that's where you could probably get a knockout early against Joyce. And if you want to look at the past, Joyce has been stopped in the first round by Anthony Joshua. Yes, it was a long time ago, but has Joyce really improved since then? So just to say that a very good friend and close friend of mine is working. They might have finished the documentary already, on a documentary with Joyce and his mum. There's going to be a big documentary. She's a very big boxing fan, from what I've been told. So my friend is working on that documentary, and that's going to be out, I believe, probably on. It's coming out soon. If it's not already out, it'll be out soon. So, yeah. Yes, John Smith, how you doing? You know, so I look at this fight, I think to myself, it's Joyce backing Parker up against the ropes and forcing Parker against the ropes, because Joyce can only fight one way. Joyce can only fight one way, and that's trudge forward, use his jab, back his ropes, and use the power. Use power. I just don't know if Joyce can fight any other way than that. Use your jab, push you back, get you against the ropes, and then pummel you. Can he do anything than that? Does like the old nice body shot. He does see punches coming. He does turn his head away from shots. But I don't like the way in that Hammer fight. I don't like that all where he was hurt early in the Hammer fight. I thought he was hurt in the Hammer fight. But as you saw at the end, what Joyce can do when he starts putting shots together. So I think it's going to be boxing science versus the caveman. That's what it is, I'm afraid to say, because when you have a guy like Joseph Parker that can move back and forth, side to side, high boxing IQ, good stamina, good chin, punching power, you know, he then starts to make someone like Joyce look like a caveman, because because of the you know, when you're slow and methodical, it makes Joyce look, you know, look, you know, pretty good. But when you got a guy who's got faster hands and can move a bit, you know, if you look at even the fight with him against Bryant Jennings, got to go back and look at that fight again. Bryant Jennings fight where Bryant Jennings was able to hurt Joyce to the body. So that Andy Lee would have looked at stuff like that as well and look at Joyce's body. So might take a great shot. They say if you can take a good shot to the chin, go downstairs to the body. So Andy Lee will look at those things. Andy Lee, I think, is a very good trainer. Yeah. And you'll see that in the corner. You'll see that in the corner with Andy Lee working with Joseph Parker. And that could be the telling factor in this fight. If Joyce is to win this fight, I believe he wins it by knockout. And Parker can win this fight by points. And he can win the fight by knockout. You've got to be versatile. You can't keep doing what Joyce is doing. Eventually, you're going to get found out. This might be the fight where Joyce gets found out. If it were me, I would not be fighting Joseph Parker now. I would have swerved this fight against Parker, got my world title fight, won my world title, and then defending against Parker. Because let's put it this way. What does Joyce win by this fight? He doesn't. It's Parker who gains. Parker gains the number one position. Parker gains the first man to beat Joe Joyce. But if Joe Joyce beats Joseph Parker, he beats the guy that's been beaten by Anthony Joshua and Dillian White already. Anthony Joshua got beat by Usyk and Andy Ruiz, the fat guys, they say. I didn't say that. They say that. And Dillian White got knocked out by Povetkin, Tyson Fury, and Anthony Joshua. So you know, that thing will come out if Joe Joyce wins. You know, so if Parker wins, Parker's got everything to gain, and he's number two. He's got everything to gain. Bad fight for Joe Joyce. Stylistically, all wrong for Joe Joyce. It just looked like, to me, they're saying there's a rematch clause as well, that if he loses in October, they'll have a rematch in December. I've never known well, I don't know. Is it possible that a fight could be rearranged that quickly? I mean, if Joyce were to get stopped early, then yeah, maybe a rematch could happen in December, but it doesn't sound likely that October. I can't see a rematch happening that quickly. But yeah, I think they're right to have that rematch clause in place, but I don't think they're right for taking the fight. I really don't think they're right for taking the fight. I would have fought anybody else, but not Joseph Parker, because of the so much to lose, not so much to gain. And, you know, you could fight Alexander Usyk, but he's the number one in the world. Outside Tyson Fury, he's number one or two in the world, but he's a world champion. If you lose to Usyk, at least you're losing to the guy that people recognize as former undisputed cruiserweight champion of the world, current unified heavyweight champion of the world, and guess what? Unbeaten. You know, losing to him isn't as bad as losing to Joseph Parker. But Joseph Parker beating Joe Joyce, it's a great win. It's a great win. You know, that's just the way I see it. And it seems to me that I don't know how many people want to help Joe Joyce. It seemed like the Dubois fight, that was a fight that looked like, you know, they didn't want Joyce to win that fight, and he won it. So he's been matched quite hard in his career. If you look at Joe Joyce's resume, he's been matched pretty hard in his career. You know, if you look at how most of the heavyweights in the world, the majority of the fighters in the world are matched. You look at the guys that Joyce has been matched against, he's matched pretty well. So that may bode him well in this fight. But if he says he's going to try not get hit as much in this fight, well, good luck to him on that one. He's going to try not get hit as much against a guy who's got faster hands than him. Well, good luck on that one, Joe Joyce and Ishmael Salas. I don't rate Ishmael Salas. I think there are better trainers in the world than him at heavyweight. But that's just me talking. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Who are you picking to win the fight? And what do you think of my thoughts on this fight, big fight between Joyce and Joseph Parker? Good luck to both men. And I look forward to watching the press conference and obviously the weigh-in, and of course the fight on Saturday night. See you soon. Take care.